reason is we're going to be in Daniel chapter 2. And I want to be why Daniel chapter 2. How many of you know that it's election week? Okay, a few of you. Some of you, I think, need to get a paper or something. Okay, how many of you have concerns about the outcome of the election? Okay, right. Okay, and then my final question is, how many of you know the situations that Daniel was under in the book of Daniel? Okay, a few of you. So, I want to start with reading the passage and then talk about why I picked this passage. It says, starting in Daniel chapter 2, starting in verse 19, it says, well, actually, let me lead into this a little bit. This chapter is known for, okay, I got to make sure I get it in order. How many know that Daniel is not in chronological order either? So, this is the King Nebuchadnezzar, very bad king. He's the one that raised Jerusalem to the ground and put all of Israel in captivity, including brought Daniel and his 3 friends. Well, King Nebuchadnezzar had a dream, right? And he had a dream, and he told all the advisors and everybody that told him what his dreams meant, I had a dream, tell me what the dream was, and tell me its interpretation. And of course, everybody's like, we need to know what the dream was for us to be able to tell you the interpretation. But King Nebuchadnezzar was like, no, I don't trust you guys, so if you can tell me the dream, then I know you can tell me the interpretation will be accurate, okay? And so they insisted they couldn't, so King Nebuchadnezzar, like he was prone to do, said, okay, kill everybody and make their houses a dunghill, okay? If you're King James, you know what a dunghill is, okay? But basically he said, everybody dies that can't tell me what the dream means, right? And so Daniel, when one of the guys came to carry out the sentence, so to speak, Daniel's like, wait, what's going on? Okay? And the guy says, well, King Nebuchadnezzar wants his dream interpreted. So Daniel said, well, let me go talk to the king. And the king gave him some time. Him and his friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they prayed about it, they fasted about it, and this is where we come in, that the secret was revealed to Daniel, the dream of King Nebuchadnezzar. Okay? So in verse 19 it starts, then the secret, the dream of Nebuchadnezzar, was revealed to Daniel in a night vision. So Daniel blessed the God of heaven. Daniel answered and said, blessed be the name of God forever and ever, for wisdom and might are his. And he changes the times and the seasons. He removes kings and raises up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding. He reveals deep and secret things. He knows what is in the darkness, and light dwells with him. I thank you and praise you, O God of my fathers. You have given me wisdom and might, and have now made known to me what we asked of you, for you have made known to us the king's demand. Okay, so then, what did Daniel have to contend with? What did Daniel go through? And my whole point behind this sermon today, and you saw the title slide, is don't worry, be joyful. Okay, we have a lot of concerns about this election, but guess what? I want to point out the timetable that Daniel lived in and the fact that God is in control. We just saw that in the opening verses that we'll go over soon. Okay? So first, the things that Daniel's contending with is the Jews rebelling against God. That's why they're captive in Babylon. God kept giving them a time to repent, kept trying, they wouldn't. And so God says, okay, I'm going to send you into captivity into Babylon. Okay, so the Jews were under captivity in Babylon. And while there, so Daniel was one of the crew that went. He was he was a smart man, him and his 3 friends. And the first chapter, Daniel talks about them not wanting to, I'm trying to give you the whole book of Daniel in one sermon, and it's going to be difficult. So I don't want to keep you here all day. But so he had to eat, we're going to eat food offered to idols. Daniel said, no, I'm not going to eat it. So he ate his veggies and his friends, and they were healthier than the friends, okay? And so Daniel served under 4 kings in Babylon from the time he got there, okay? So there was 4 events under Nebuchadnezzar, okay? There was the vegetable thing where they didn't want to eat the king's meat. They have the dream of the statue, or that's where we came into, the statue. How many know of the statue of Nebuchadnezzar? The gold, the silver, the bronze, the iron and clay, okay? So that's one of the things that happened under Nebuchadnezzar. And then the other thing was the fiery furnace. Daniel didn't participate in that, but Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego participated in that. And then there was a golden statue that everybody was supposed to bow down to, and Daniel wouldn't do that. And then there was the pride of Nebuchadnezzar, okay? He had a dream that Daniel told him about his pride, that he would turn into a beast of the field, so to speak, and that occurred, okay? Then there was one, and I'm pointing all these out because there's a lot in the book of Daniel, okay? And there's a lot that he is contending with. We feel like we're contending with a lot today with what we got going in politics. We have a very divided country, very much a country that is not following God, very much just continual contention amongst the world, and sometimes even in our own churches over political stance, okay? And so there's one event under Belshazzar. Belshazzar was using the goods from the temple that they took from Jerusalem, and he was having a party and making a big deal of it, and then there was the writing on the wall. How many have heard that term, the writing on the wall, right? And so that comes from the hand that appears and writes on the wall for Belshazzar, basically saying that you are found wanting and you will be judged this evening, and he died that night. Okay, and then that was followed by Darius, was the king that followed. And you got to realize Daniel lived to be around 90 years old to be able to live through all these kings. Okay, and the whole time he followed God, he served God, he stayed true to God, despite the country he was in that had no interest in serving God. Okay. And so he had one event under Darius. Does anybody know the one event with Daniel that's left that I haven't said yet? Daniel in the lion's den, right? Okay, so there was that one. And then also he had a major prayer for the Jews and a visit by the angel Gabriel. Okay. Then finally the last king that Daniel served was the release of the Jews under King Cyrus, okay? So that, again, 70 years worth of captivity in Babylon, okay? In a very ungodly country that couldn't care less about what God wanted you to do or not do. Very much Babylon to this day, as we see that in Revelation, when we think of Babylon, we think the very opposite of Jerusalem. And it's very often in the Bible listed that way, okay? And so, but what is it? So it makes you wonder, okay, how Daniel felt, what Daniel went through to be able to live through that, right? Because we got that going on today. We got a lot of unrest happening in our country today. Okay, and so starting off first, the secret was revealed to Daniel in a night vision. So Daniel blessed the God of heaven. So first off, here's the thing. If you want things to go well, try to be as committed as Daniel was. How many feel like you're as committed as Daniel was? Right? That's a hard one to live under, right? And so, but Daniel always recognized that God was in charge. And I think that's the first thing we need to recognize in this coming week, that God is in charge, okay? And Daniel blessed the God. Remember, we learned that blessed means spoke well of, okay? Daniel spoke well of the God of heaven. Okay, and so then Daniel's addressing the king about the fact that he has an interpretation to the dream. And you got to realize that we are still waiting for the final prophecy to be completed of this dream of King Nebuchadnezzar and the statue, right? Everybody knows that you hear about the statue, but do you realize that is prophetic in every section of that statue? And we're basically in the feet and toes and the clay and the iron, somewhere in that mix, okay, of this prophecy that was way back when, around, if I get my timetable right, about 500 BC, okay? This is about 500 BC that this is going on, that Daniel is seeing this stuff and revealing this to Nebuchadnezzar. And what's interesting is it's shown to Nebuchadnezzar before it's even really shown to Daniel. Even though Daniel knows what the dream is and he interprets it, this dream of the future is shown to King Nebuchadnezzar first. At least that's the way it plays out in the book of Daniel. Okay? And so Daniel's answered and said, "Blessed be the name of God forever and ever. For wisdom and might are his. And see, this does, in my mind, still relate to what we're doing and where we were at in Ephesians, okay, where we're currently at. We were talking about God's foreknowledge, God's omniscience, okay? He knows everything. His wisdom is above anything we could do, okay? And might talks about his omnipotence. If you know everything, you've been around for everything, you're all powerful. Okay? And look at what he says. He says, and he changes the times and seasons. That's easy for us to accept. No, we got rain because God designed it that way. We have sunshine. But he removes kings and raises up kings. Okay? God does that. God is responsible for the outcome of this election, believe it or not. Okay? Because we don't know how it's going to go, and we know how we want it to go, but God is the one that's got it already figured out, is already going to do it. Okay? He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding. Again, we see that repeated even in the New Testament from James. If anyone seeks wisdom, let him ask of God, right? So God is the one that provides that perfect wisdom to us. Okay, continuing on, it says, in this same passage, it says, he reveals the deep and secret things. He knows what is in the darkness and the light and dwells with him. I thank you and praise you, O God, my Father. So Daniel living this life that he didn't want to live, being taken into captivity, but still serving God. He's saying, I thank you and praise you, O God of my fathers. His faith did not waver despite where he was and what he was living through. Okay? And it says, you have given me wisdom and might and have made known to me what we asked for. You, asked of you, for you have made known to us the king's demand. Again, here, not only did Daniel thank him personally for the revelation he gave to him, but he's also making sure the king realizes that God is the one responsible for revealing this. Okay? I mean, I suppose the king could have still killed everybody because nobody revealed it to him, not even to Daniel. God revealed it to Daniel, and Daniel told then King Nebuchadnezzar. Okay? And so then I want to transition a little bit into the reason why I mentioned King Cyrus is then because we're going to see another verse that I want to look at. But I'm trying to show you the awesome way God is. I mean, he is truly omniscient. He has always been around. He will always be around. He's in full control. He's got it handled. He's not worried. He's not concerned. And we just need to recognize and realize that despite the turmoil that we find ourselves in at time, okay? Because that continues with Isaiah. Isaiah prophesied about King Cyrus about 200 years before Daniel and King Cyrus meet. Okay, and this is really, really cool because, and we won't go there. I wanted to, but I want to go on a path today, so. All right, Isaiah lived about 200 years before Cyrus, but if you look in Isaiah 44 through 45 and read that passage, it mentions Cyrus by name. It's not just some king will come up and do this and do that. No, it says, Cyrus, I know who you are. I know who you will be. I've known you from before. And it's 200 years that he's saying this. And then 200 years later, Cyrus frees the Jews from Babylon captivity. Okay? Plus, many of Isaiah's prophecies were regarding Christ. I mean, we get a lot of our Christmas cards from Isaiah, right? Behold, but unto us a child is born, right? Unto us a son is given, okay? So Isaiah was the one that did that. Isaiah talked about Cyrus 200 years later. We're at where Daniel is at, and he's going to have those other things happen in Daniel, where Daniel and Cyrus meet that was talked about 200 years prior. Do you know also that Daniel kind of knew that too? Because he knew the prophets, and in chapter 7, I think it is, Daniel starts talking about those things that he's looking at the records and he's looking at the prophecies and he's like, wait a minute, time's almost up, okay? Kind of like what we do today when we look at Revelation, we look at some of the things happening in the news and the things we're like, whoa, things are moving, right? Things are happening. Okay? And so Isaiah says in Isaiah chapter 46, 9 through 10, again, my focus is on the awesomeness of God and how he's got everything in control. It says, remember the former things of old, for I am God. This is God talking to Isaiah, that Isaiah jotted down in the book of Isaiah. And God saying, remember the former things of old. For I am God, there is no other. I am God, and there is none like me. Okay, declaring from the end, from the beginning, and from ancient times, things that are not yet done. So back when God revealed this to Isaiah, he knew who was going to win this week's election. Okay? Before he told Isaiah this, he knew who was going to win this week's election. Okay? It's that simple. God already knows. He's not worried about it. He's not concerned about it. But God knows, and he's got it all in control. And that's what we need to remember, is God is in control. Okay? And it says, my counsel shall stand, and I will do all my pleasure. In other words, God's saying, I got a plan. I'm going to do my plan. I'm going to work my plan. And nobody's going to be able to change anything about my plan. No matter how much we vote, and if the other side wins, then it doesn't matter. It's still God's plan, right? We vote our conscience. We vote the way we want to vote. But if our side doesn't win, it doesn't matter because God wins. God wins. I mean, I don't know if you guys looked at the back of the book of the Bible, but God wins, okay? If you didn't know that, God wins, okay? So that leads me to ask you this question before we move into the next passage. Will your faith in God persist no matter what? Okay? And so I want to look at Luke chapter 18, where Jesus just told a parable about a widow lady complaining to an unjust judge that couldn't care less about the people, and the unjust judge was going to be like, get away from me, I don't want to deal with you, but he finally reasoned, if I don't do what this lady is asking me, she is never going to leave me alone. Okay? And Jesus is referring this and telling these parables in relation to our prayers to him. Okay? It says, hear what the unjust said, which I just told you, and shall God not avenge his own elect who cry out day and night to him, though he bears long with them? So think about this. It's interesting the spin that Jesus puts on this. He says, and shall not God avenge his own elect? So God's going to avenge us. God's going to, if we're a Christian, we're following, we're going to be avenged, okay? But listen to this. Though he bears long with them. That kind of shows you that we're still human and that we're still not perfect. And so we don't always get our way. But we should constantly be in prayer with him. And because God does bear long with us. He does. I mean, it's quite simple. He bears long with us, at least for me. I don't know about you guys, but I haven't perfected it yet. So it says, so I tell you, he will avenge them speedily. And this is what trips us up sometimes, I think. He avenges us speedily. He will avenge them speedily. And we're like, well, when's it going to happen? Why isn't it happening? Okay? That's why when we look at the Peter passage where it says that 1 day is 1,000 years and 1,000 years is as 1 day to God, that's not because of a specific timeline. It just means like when you are outside of time, speedily is relevant, right? It's relevant to us, but not to him because he's outside of time. So he will speedily. We live through a lot and we struggle and it's hard, but we need to recognize in God's timeline, we are just a vapor. You know, we're griping about being in a vapor when we're going to be in eternity if we are saved, okay? And it says, nevertheless, here's why I asked you that question. Nevertheless, when the Son of Man comes, will he really find faith on the earth? When things aren't going our way, when this country that we feel was founded on Christian principles is falling apart at the seams, and things are going, and there's so much anger and hatred and things like that going on, will Christ, when he comes, still find faith on the earth, right? Can we maintain our faith to him even when things aren't going the way we want them to go? Because you got to recognize that even Jesus, things did not go the way he would have wanted. They did, but they didn't, right? He was still human, because we see that in John chapter 19, starting at verse 10. It says, and this is his crucifixion day, okay? Christ is getting ready to die for our sins. We know that he wanted to do it, but we also know he didn't want to do it, because he said, God, if this cup could pass me, nevertheless, your will, not mine, be done. So he didn't want it. The human part of him did not want to die. Okay? It was going to be suffering. And so then Pilate, the one that condemns him to death, he tries to wash his hands of it, but still he's the one that gave the sentence. And that's what's also interesting, a little rabbit trail. Is that the Jews could not sentence Christ to death because they were not their own country anymore. They had to ask permission. If somebody was guilty under their religion for the death penalty, they couldn't dole it out because they were under Roman captivity, and so that's why Pilate had to give them the permission to crucify Jesus. And so in verse 10, starting in verse 10, it says, then Pilate said to him, Are you not speaking to me? Do you not know that I have power to crucify you and power to release you? Because Jesus is just letting them say all these things, not giving a response. He's just as a lamb to the slaughter, right? And Jesus answered, you could have no power at all against me unless it had been given to you from above. Therefore, the one who delivered me to you has the greater sin. You could have no power at all against me unless it had been given you above. Okay? No matter who's in the government, no matter who's in charge, they couldn't get there if it wasn't given to them by God. God is omniscient. God knows all. God is all powerful. He knows what's going on in this country. And no matter, we do our part. Like I said, get out there and vote. We do our part. But no matter the result, it's God's result. And that's sometimes very hard for us to accept. Okay? And so then, before I get to my so what, I want to address two questions to contemplate. And this hit me when I read in my reading plan the passage, will Jesus find faith in the earth, right, when he returns? That whole passage about the unjust judge. Can we as Christians truly allow God to be God in this election regardless of the outcome? We can't help but let God be God, but you know what we mean? What I mean is that we think, well, of course God wants it to go this way, so therefore it should go this way. And when it doesn't go this way, are you going to be okay with that? Are you going to let yourself be okay and let God truly be God in this election? Okay? And the other thing I want to ask is, our faith contingent on things going our way? Okay? If it doesn't go your way come this Tuesday, okay, recognize, rely on God, trust in God. He's got it under control, okay? No matter what, we need to recognize that, we can as humans sometimes like, well, God, you didn't answer the way I wanted, so I'm going to do things my way. We can't do that. We got to rely on God, trust in Him. So that takes me back to my so what. Don't worry, be joyful. It says, remember that when the world seems to be falling apart, God is not worried or surprised, and the outcome is His. Therefore, take up the motto, don't worry, be joyful. All right? That takes me to my point to ponder. Okay, that leads me to my point to ponder. This election week, how will you maintain your faith in God, especially if it does not go your way? These are points to ponder because you don't have to answer these questions out loud. This is between you and God. Okay, so think about that. And then for the next week, finalize memorizing Ephesians 1:19. And then, if you really want to know how Job handled his accusations against God, God responded to him, you need to read chapters 38 through 42 of Job and just recognize what God's like, I got things under control, and who are you to question me? And then chapter 42 is Job asking forgiveness, basically, for what he accused or questioned God about. So it's a good thing, I think, to read this week as we prepare for whichever way it goes, okay? And with that, we're going to